Hello, and welcome back to today's special, where I will be ranking the 4 Alice in Wonderland films I have just watched. And I would like to start off by saying it is this film series that actually triggered me to start doing this comparison between Disney films in the first place. As back whenever it was I came across that there was a horror version of Alice in Wonderland, I knew about the live actions, and of course everyone knows about the classic cartoon, so it got me wondering, what are the comparable difference between them? As well as which would be better, the live action, the cartoon, or the horror. Since then, I have started off on a journey to do this with as many Disney films as I can. Not every single Disney film has a horror version of it. Not every single Disney film has a live action version of it yet. So I started off my journey with Snow White, as that is like the first big iconic classic Disney film princess. And then I just slowly worked my way through the years of the Disney films until I finally hit Alice in Wonderland. I've got many more years and so many more Disney films to go through. It's slowly approaching the years of the Disney films that I have seen before it goes back into the newer Disney films that I have not seen. But anyway, let's get into my ranking of Alice in Wonderland, shall we? Now, coming in last place, now please don't hate me, hardcore Disney fans. I am actually putting the classic Alice in Wonderland cartoon at the bottom. I get the whole film is based around a girl that has a lot of imagination and just went into a complete Wonderland daze, as it does appear, in fact, that she fell asleep during her sister's reading the history book or whatever it was her sister was reading. Other than having a compelling need to chase a white rabbit relentlessly through her imagination, it just felt a little bit all over the place. Everything was random. The story, it just didn't flow fluently as I would have liked. Now, it did have one little dark scene with the shrimp and the walrus, was it? That was definitely a little bit on the dark side. And all in all, the whole film just felt a little bit all over the place, a little bit hard to figure out what the whole purpose of the film was, other than Alice just wanting to chase a white rabbit and being completely lost in imagination. Now, it wasn't all bad, as I really did love the Mad Hatter scene, as that was really good, it was funny, and definitely the highlight of that movie. Now, coming in at third place, which was also a very close bottom with the classic, and that is Alice in Terrorland. Obviously, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was more of a kind of twisted, slightly scary horror that was using the Alice in Wonderland book as reference to story points and very mildly related hallucinations throughout the course of the movie. If I do recall rightly, I do believe it had a couple jump scares, as I do in fact believe it caught me twice. So I give it a couple points on the horror front, but I still think it's probably the weakest horror film I've seen in terms of jump scares. And it did, as much as it did have a couple jump scares, I think the fourth Jaws film gave me more of a fright than this. And outside of those few jump scares and a couple gross scenes, it was a very slow burn. And I think I was ultimately thankful that it was only like an hour and a half film tops. It might have been an hour and 10 minutes. And so I was really thankful for it being a short film. I was glad it was over when it was over. Now, coming in at second place, now this was a very close call, but ultimately I decided to put this one in second place due to the continuity errors it created with the first live action, and that is Alice Through the Looking Glass. Unlike the next live action that I will talk about in a minute, that had loose references to the cartoons where it makes you wonder whether it's a sequel to the cartoon or not, this being a sequel to the previous live action, with all the same cast within the film, you would think continuity would make sense within this story in terms of what happened in the first story, as there are quite a few scenes that just didn't add up. The continuity of this film completely made it feel like it was a sequel to another different film that we hadn't seen. As, for example, the Mad Hatter being cursed to be stuck having tea, or 1 minute tea time, by time. When you revisit the Mad Hatter's story in the first live action film, it takes you back to a time where he literally states that he was a hatter for the White Queen before the Jabberwocky attacked and burnt everything and killed his family. In this film, time had cursed him to be stuck having tea, and he was never there for when the Jabberwocky attacked the town with his family. And the events leading up to him walking away from his family in the first place also didn't add up. When the Hatter tells you about his backstory in the first film, he was the Hatter to the White Queen before the Jabberwocky attacked and burnt the village and killed his family. Now, this version of the events have him not even at the scene when the Jabberwocky attacks, so he didn't even see his family get burnt or massacred, as his story was in the first film. So it completely messes up that continuity as well. And now I think there was a couple other continuity errors that this film generated, but I can't remember those off the top of my head, and they're not as important or as big or significant. It really is just that continuity really made this error stand out because it's quite a big one, and it is that continuity error that put this film in second place. As for the rest of the film itself, as a standalone, I really enjoyed it, seeing time and having him try and teach Alice a life lesson of like how important time is. Everything has its time and place, and the fact that you do have to part with everything at some point in your life. I think that whole life lesson that's taught within this film is far better than any of the other films, which is why it is a close call, and it was narrowed down to second place only because of the continuity error. But I did love the film, and time definitely had some amazing moments within that film. Now, of course, at first place, that does mean the live action Alice in Wonderland. The film that I actually thought was a remake of the classic cartoon. There's only a couple scenes that don't quite add up that makes you think maybe it's a sequel to a live action film that we never got to see. But it definitely plays off a sequel story arc compared to actually being a remake to the cartoon. And that was a pleasant, unexpected surprise. Now, obviously, like I said, I had seen this film in the cinema when it back was first released. But paired up with the fact that I hadn't seen the cartoon, I had always assumed it was just a live action retelling of the classic Disney cartoon. So I think it was a pleasant surprise diving into this franchise. It had a lot of great moments, and I think the thing that I actually loved the most about this live action over the cartoon was the actress playing the Red Queen, whose name I keep forgetting, but I do know she plays Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter films. I loved her as the Red Queen. Off with their heads. Brilliant. She played the villain so well, and I absolutely loved the villain in this film. And I think one of the reasons why I probably ranked the live action over the cartoon is because I think for the first time in a Disney film, I actually loved the villain. I actually was rooting for how the villain was portrayed. I loved how she captured that villain essence of like not caring about anything other than herself. She played a really great villain, and that's what I loved about the film. Of course, this is my own personal opinions and views on how these films were ranked according to how I felt about these films, and I'm curious about what your rankings are of these films, if you've seen them all, or if you've seen some of them and you don't intend to watch others, which I don't blame you if you don't want to watch the horror movie, as it's not really Alice in Wonderland. It's very loosely hinted towards with a couple references and a couple trappy hallucinations. It's mostly just a jump scare thing. I mean, the Alice in the horror version didn't even wear the iconic dress that is depicted on the front cover of this film, so I don't blame you if you don't want to watch the horror movie. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this ranking, and I am curious about what your thoughts are in the comments below. And I also do have hopes of doing a horror version of Bambi for Halloween sometime. But anyway, until next time, I'll see you then. Until then, bye!